The gunshot came first. Before the screaming. Before the glass shattered. Before the 300 people inside the Blackwell Tower ballroom understood what was happening, the gunshot came first. And the only person in that entire building who did not flinch was Viktor Crane. He stood at the center of the room in a black suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent, a glass of water in his hand, completely still while everyone around him collapsed into panic. His dark eyes moved, not frantically, but with the slow, deliberate precision of a man who had trained himself, over 20 years, to find the information inside the chaos rather than become part of it. He found it in 3 seconds. East corridor. Second floor. A muzzle flash that had already vanished. And on the floor near the corridor entrance, a child. Not hit. Not bleeding. Just frozen. A little girl in a faded yellow dress, pressed against the wall with her white cane gripped in both hands, her face turned upward at an angle that had nothing to do with sight. She was listening. Reading the room through the sound of it, the way she read everything, because it was the only way she had. Viktor Crane set his glass down on a passing tray. He had been in this building for exactly 47 minutes. He had shaken the right hands, acknowledged the right faces, and was 3 steps into the ritual that the Obsidian Gala demanded of him every year, the model lineup, the selection, the political signal it sent to every family and syndicate represented in that room. 12 women, each one representing an alliance, a relationship, a message. He had walked away from all of them. Not because of the gunshot. Because of her. He had seen her 6 minutes before the shot was fired. A small figure near the east wall, navigating the edge of the ballroom with the careful, unhurried confidence of someone who had learned to trust the world through touch and sound rather than light. 9 years old. Blind since birth. Wearing a dress that had been washed so many times the yellow had surrendered to something almost white. She was not on any guest list. Viktor had noticed her the way he noticed everything, quietly, completely, without drawing attention to the noticing. He had signaled his head of security, Marco, with 2 fingers held low at his hip. Marco had gone to investigate. Viktor had kept moving toward the lineup. But something had snagged inside him. Something old and buried and dangerous. The way she tilted her head. The angle of her chin. The particular way she held the cane, not as a tool, but as an extension of herself. Like it was part of her body rather than something she carried. His daughter Elena had held her cane exactly that way. Viktor had taken a breath and kept walking. And then the gunshot. Now he was moving toward the girl, not running, because running in a room full of panicking people created stampedes and stampedes created casualties. He moved with the controlled urgency of a man who had learned that speed and haste were not the same thing, clearing a path through the crush of bodies by pure presence alone, people stepping aside without knowing why. Responding to something in the set of his shoulders that said, without words, without threat, move. He reached her in 19 seconds. She was still pressed against the wall. Still listening. Still completely, inexplicably calm in the middle of chaos that had reduced grown adults around her to tears. Viktor crouched to her level. He kept his voice low. Warm. Entirely unlike the voice most people heard from Viktor Crane. Are you hurt? The girl turned her face toward him. That careful, reading pause, processing his voice the way other people processed a face. No, she said. Good. He looked her over quickly, no blood, no injury, just a child alone in the wrong building at the wrong time. What's your name? Another pause. Shorter this time. Ava. Viktor felt it move through him like a current. Elena's middle name had been Ava. He did not let it show on his face. He had spent 20 years not letting things show on his face. Ava, he said. I'm going to get you out of here. Stay close to me. She tilted her head again. That listening look. Measuring something in his voice that he couldn't identify. Okay, she said simply. He slipped his jacket off and draped it over her shoulders, a gesture that served 2 purposes, though Ava could only have understood one of them. It was warm. It also covered the yellow dress. Because Viktor Crane had just realized something. The gunshot had not been fired at the crowd. It had been fired at her. He looked back across the room. The three men he had been tracking for the last 20 minutes, the waiter who hadn't served a drink, the man on the balcony who checked his watch every 90 seconds, the figure near the corridor entrance with his hand permanently inside his jacket, had repositioned. Silently. Efficiently. The way professionals repositioned when a primary engagement failed. They were recalibrating. Viktor stood slowly. He took Ava's free hand in his left hand. His right hand moved to his earpiece. Marco. His voice was barely above a breath. 3 hostiles. Active repositioning. The girl is the target. East stairwell, I need it clear in 90 seconds. Marco's voice came back immediately. Viktor, I need you to know something first. 90 seconds, Marco. Viktor. A pause that was 1 beat too long. I found out who she is. Viktor kept moving, slow, steady, navigating Ava through the thinning crowd toward the service corridor. Around them the ballroom was reorganizing itself, security personnel herding guests, someone shouting about a gas leak to explain the gunshot, the machinery of cover story already engaging. Tell me, Viktor said. Her father was Samuel Reeves. He worked the Eastern Docks. 6 months ago he died in an accident. Marco's voice was controlled, but Viktor had known him for 11 years and he could hear the thing underneath the control. It wasn't an accident. Viktor stopped walking. He was in the service corridor now. The ballroom noise behind them, dim emergency lighting ahead. Ava stood beside him, head tilted, listening to a silence she could not fully read. Who killed him? Viktor said. Marco said the name. And Viktor Crane, who had not felt cold in a very long time, felt it now. Dorian Voss, Marco said. Viktor looked down at Ava. At her small wrist. At the worn bracelet that her fingers kept moving to, kept touching, the unconscious gesture of a child reaching for the last thing her father gave her. Marco, Viktor said. There's something in that bracelet. A silence. Viktor. Marco's voice had changed entirely. How did you know? Because Samuel Reeves worked for Dorian. And the only reason Dorian sends 3 professionals into my gala to kill a 9-year-old blind child, Viktor's eyes stayed on the bracelet, is if she's carrying something that can destroy him. Ava's fingers were on the bracelet. She didn't know. She had no idea that the last thing her father ever gave her was a weapon. That the bracelet she wore every day, the one she touched when she was scared, when she was lonely, when she needed to feel him close, was the reason 3 men with guns had just reorganized themselves inside a building full of powerful people in order to reach her. Viktor crouched down again. Ava, he said. The bracelet your father gave you. Did he tell you to keep it safe? She was very still. He said never take it off, she said. Her voice had changed, smaller, careful. The voice of a child guarding something precious. He said it was the most important thing I owned. Viktor looked at her face. 9 years old. Blind. Alone. Living at the docks for 3 months since the orphanage that had taken her in after her father died had quietly closed its doors. She had survived on instinct and stubbornness and the particular fearlessness of someone who had never been able to see the danger coming and had therefore learned to walk toward it anyway. Samuel Reeves had sewn his daughter's future into her wrist. And the people who had killed him had spent 6 months hunting her for it. Viktor stood. You're the most important thing I'm protecting tonight, he said quietly. Ava tilted her face toward him. That measuring pause. You sound like you mean that, she said. I do. And in the dim service corridor of the Blackwell Tower, with the sound of 300 confused guests behind them and 3 professional killers somewhere in the building ahead of them, Viktor Crane made a decision that would cost him more than he currently understood, and change more than he could currently predict. He tightened his grip on Ava's hand. And he walked forward. If you want to know what happens next, stay right there. This story is just getting started. The east stairwell was not clear. Marco's voice in Victor's ear confirmed it with the tight economy of a man delivering bad news to someone who needed facts, not apology. 2 men on the landing between floors 2 and 3. Armed. Waiting. They knew your exit route before you did. Victor processed this without stopping. He was moving through the service corridor with Ava's hand in his, the building's emergency lighting casting everything in the red of a warning that was entirely appropriate. The kitchen-level exit, Victor said. Possibly clear. I have 1 man trying to confirm. Possibly isn't good enough. It's what I have, Victor. Ava spoke from beside him. There are footsteps above us. 2 sets. They're not moving, they're waiting. Victor looked at her. She had her head tilted at the ceiling, her expression concentrated and still. Reading the building through its sounds the way a musician reads a score, every vibration meaningful, every silence as significant as the noise. 2nd floor landing, she said. That matches, Marco said in Victor's ear. Victor looked at the child beside him and made the kind of recalibration that his world required constantly, the willingness to accept information from unexpected sources, to let go of assumptions about who was useful and who was not. In 20 years of operating in the city's invisible world, he had survived largely because he never made the mistake of underestimating what was in front of him. He was not going to start now. Ava, he said. Can you hear the kitchen from here? She closed her eyes. Victor watched her, the slight parting of her lips, the complete stillness of the rest of her, everything concentrated into that one sharpened sense. That way, she said. She pointed left without hesitation. Metal. Heat. Something frying. And water running. Victor turned left. The corridor bent and narrowed. Service pipes ran along the ceiling. The floor was bare concrete. Behind them the muffled sounds of the ballroom, voices, movement, the controlled chaos of an event that had been interrupted and was trying to reassemble itself, grew fainter with each step. Victor's phone vibrated once. He checked it without slowing. Marco, 3rd hostile just entered service corridor behind you. 30 seconds. Victor looked ahead. The kitchen was visible now, a set of double swing doors with round windows, light bleeding through the edges. 30 seconds. He could reach the doors in 10. Ava, he said. I need you to move quickly. Don't worry about the sound, just move. There's someone behind us, she said. I know. He's walking fast. I know that too. Are you going to deal with him? Victor pushed through the kitchen doors, pulling Ava through ahead of him, letting the doors swing shut behind them. The kitchen was enormous, industrial, stainless steel, heat bright. 3 staff members frozen in the act of plating courses and staring at a man in a dress shirt and a small girl who had just walked through the service entrance at speed. Victor looked at the staff. He reached into his pocket and placed 4 folded bills on the nearest counter without counting them. Leave, he said. They left. The kitchen door swung open 2 seconds later. The man who came through was broad, professional, and had the particular blankness of expression that came from doing this kind of work long enough that it no longer required emotion. He had a gun in his right hand and he raised it the moment he cleared the doors. Victor was already moving. The encounter lasted 9 seconds. Victor used the edge of a prep counter, the weight of a commercial stockpot, and the particular advantage of someone who had been trained by people who operated in small spaces with limited options. The man went down. The gun slid under the nearest stainless steel shelf. Victor straightened. Checked his hands. A cut on his left palm, minor. Ava was standing exactly where he had positioned her, behind the central island, her cane in both hands, her face turned toward the sound of the encounter. You're fast, she said. I had good teachers, Victor said. Is he dead? No. She nodded slowly. Processing this. Victor noticed she did not ask whether he was all right. She seemed to already know. The exit, he said. North side of the kitchen. Do you smell it? Ava lifted her chin. Cold air, she said. And rain. There's a door. Good girl. They moved through the kitchen, past the industrial ovens, past the racks of plates and the hanging pots, to the north wall where a heavy fire door stood between them and the service alley outside. Viktor hit the bar. Cold air and the smell of wet asphalt hit them both. He looked out. The alley was narrow, poorly lit, running between the Blackwell Tower and the adjacent parking structure. Viktor scanned it. Shadows, a dumpster, a delivery van parked 40 meters to the right. No movement. He moved Ava through the door. They were 10 steps into the alley when Viktor's earpiece spoke. Viktor. Marco's voice was different now. Careful. The power is about to go. What? Dorian's people cut the external supply at the junction box on Falconer Street. Building is switching to emergency generators. It's happening in. Every light went out. Not a flicker. Not a gradual fade. Everything, the alley lights, the exterior lighting of Blackwell Tower, the lit windows above them, the distant glow from the parking structure, extinguished simultaneously. The city at this particular address became, in one breath, absolute dark. From inside the building behind them, screaming. From somewhere above them, glass breaking. Viktor stood in the dark alley with Ava's hand in his and made a precise assessment of their situation. He could not see. He could not see his hand in front of his face. He could not see the alley, the dumpster, the delivery van, the entrance to the parking structure. He could not see the rooftop access he had been trying to reach. He could not see anything at all. Ava squeezed his hand once. I can see, she said quietly. Viktor looked in her direction, though looking meant nothing in this darkness. Tell me what you mean, he said. I don't see like you see, she said. But in the dark, everything is still there. The sounds don't change. The air doesn't change. The smells don't change. She paused. You're the one who changed. You went quiet. You went still. Because you lost something you depend on and you don't know how to move without it. Viktor said nothing. I never had it, Ava said. So I never lost it. There was no arrogance in her voice. No performance of capability. Just a 9-year-old girl stating a fact about her own life with the directness of someone who had never been taught to diminish herself. Viktor exhaled slowly. All right, he said. Lead. He felt her shift beside him. The slight adjustment of her weight. The tap of her cane on the wet asphalt, once, twice, mapping the surface. There are 3 steps down to the left, she said. Then the ground levels. The van is 40 meters ahead on the right. Past the van there's a staircase going up. I can hear the metal. Fire escape. That's where we need to go, Viktor said. Then follow me, Ava said. And Viktor Crane, who had not followed anyone in 20 years, followed her. She moved through the absolute dark with a confidence that did not announce itself. There were no hesitations, no stumbles, no second guessing. The cane found the steps. Her feet found the level ground. She navigated the space between a chain-link fence and the alley wall with 6 inches to spare on either side without slowing. Viktor stayed 1 step behind with his hand on her shoulder, not directing. Present. From above them, from inside the building, they could hear the sounds of Dorian's operation continuing to unfold. Voices on radios. Footsteps. The controlled, systematic movement of people who had been given a job and were doing it in the dark because the dark was the point. Ava stopped. Someone is on the fire escape, she said. Viktor went still. He listened, and this time, in the silence, he heard it too. The soft metallic creak of a person shifting their weight on an iron landing. A single sound. Someone waiting. One person, Ava said. He's nervous. He keeps moving his feet. Viktor reached into his jacket. Stay here, he said. Exactly here. Don't move until I come back to you. How will I know it's you coming back and not someone else? She said. Viktor thought for exactly 1 second. I'll say your name first, he said. Okay, Ava said. Viktor moved into the dark. He could not see the fire escape. He could only hear it, the creak of the landing, the faint sound of breathing, the occasional shift of feet. He moved along the alley wall with one hand trailing the brick, closing the distance silently, the way he had been taught in a different city a long time ago by a man whose name he had promised never to repeat. When he was close enough, he stopped. You're going to want to lower that, Viktor said into the dark. A long pause. Viktor Crane. The voice was young. Uncertain. Not one of Rail's professionals, one of Dorian's second tier, sent to cover the exit. I have orders. You have a choice, Viktor said. Those are different things. Another pause. Longer. Then the sound of a safety clicking on. Of a weapon being holstered. I didn't see anything, the young man said. Good decision, Viktor said. He heard footsteps going up. Going away. Going anywhere that wasn't here. Viktor turned back. Ava, he said. Here, she said immediately, from exactly where he had left her. He crossed to her. She found his hand in the dark before he reached her, a small hand closing around 2 of his fingers with calm certainty. The staircase is clear, he said. I know, she said. He left. Viktor looked at her in the dark that meant nothing to her and everything to him. You're remarkable, he said. He hadn't meant to say it aloud. Ava tilted her head. Mrs. Okafor said I was difficult, she said. She was wrong. She said that too, eventually, Ava said. They began climbing. The mid-level service terrace was 22 floors up and wide open to the night. Cold wind. City lights below. The sound of the building's emergency systems, fans cycling, generators humming, creating a low mechanical undertone that ran beneath everything else like a heartbeat. Viktor came through the roof access door first. He checked the terrace in 3 directions, left, right, and center. He found Marco immediately. Marco was at the far wall with 2 of Viktor's men, positioned deliberately, hands visible, which in the professional vocabulary they shared meant, there is already someone here and we are not escalating it. Viktor looked to the center of the terrace. Rail. He knew the face from Cypher's files. 41 years old. Former military from a country that preferred not to acknowledge his service. The last 4 years spent as Dorian Voss's most reliable solution to problems that required permanence. Rail had 3 known aliases, 0 confirmed arrests, and a professional reputation that was entirely built on results. He was standing 15 feet from the roof access door. His gun was raised. It was pointing at the door Viktor had just come through. At the space where Ava would appear when she followed him. Viktor stepped to the right, positioning himself in the gun's sight line, filling the doorway with his own body. Behind him he felt Ava's hand on his back. She had heard the change in his breathing. The change in his footstep. She had stopped before she cleared the door and was waiting, her fingers against the small of his back, reading the situation through the tension in his spine. Rail looked at him. Step aside, Viktor, he said. His voice was professionally mild. No excitement. No malice. The voice of a man completing a transaction. Viktor did not move. I'm not here for you, Rail said. This has nothing to do with you. Whatever she told you, whatever you think you're protecting, step aside and this ends quietly. Viktor looked at him. She hasn't told me anything, Viktor said. She's 9 years old. Then you have no stake in this. I have every stake in this, Viktor said. She's in my city. She's in my building. She came to this event because someone used her hunger against her. Someone used a child's need for food to lure her to a place where you were waiting. Viktor paused. That's my stake. Rail's expression didn't change. Sentiment is expensive in our world. Yes, Viktor said. It is. He took one step forward. I can afford it. Rail recalibrated. Viktor could see it, the slight adjustment of the gun's angle, the reassessment of what kind of encounter this was becoming. You'd put yourself between a bullet and an orphan you met an hour ago, Rail said. There was something in his voice that was almost curiosity. I'd do considerably more than that, Viktor said. 3 seconds of silence. Behind Viktor, Ava's hand still against his back. Completely still. Completely trusting. Marco moved. Not toward Rail, toward the angle. Viktor's 2 men moved simultaneously, flanking positions, coordinated, the geometry of it practiced and precise. Rail tracked it. Made his calculation. Understood that the math had changed. He fired anyway. It was professional reflex more than decision, the response of a man for whom firing was faster than thinking. The bullet caught Viktor on the left shoulder, not the center of mass he'd been aiming for, because Viktor had moved the moment Rail's trigger finger tightened, reading it the way he read everything in rooms like this. Viktor felt the burn. The immediate deep ache of muscle trauma. The warmth spread down his arm. He stayed standing. Marco's team closed in on Rail. The encounter was brief and completely one-sided. Viktor turned to find Ava already through the door, Rosa behind her, Rosa who had appeared from the stairwell access at the far side of the terrace, moving with the quiet efficiency of someone who had understood the plan without needing it explained. Ava was standing on the open terrace. Cold wind moving through her hair. Her cane in one hand. Her head turning slowly, reading the air, reading the sounds, reading the aftermath of everything that had just happened in the space where she was standing. She turned toward Viktor. "You're hurt," she said. It wasn't a question. "It's manageable," Viktor said. "You stepped in front of it," she said. Her voice was very quiet. "I felt you move." Viktor looked at her. At the way she was holding herself, entirely still on the outside, but her free hand tight around the strap of the cane in a way it hadn't been before. She was not made of stone. She was a 9-year-old child who had just stood on the other side of a door while a man she had known for less than 2 hours took a bullet to keep her from being shot. "Come here," Viktor said. She crossed the terrace to him. She reached up, both hands, and found his arm, his sleeve, the wet dark patch where the wound was seeping through the fabric. Her fingers were very gentle. "You got hurt because of me," she said. "I got hurt because of the man who fired the gun," Viktor said. "Those are not the same thing." She was quiet for a moment. Her fingers stayed on his arm. "My dad used to say that," she said. "He said when someone hurts you, it's their fault. Not the fault of whoever they were trying to reach." Viktor said nothing. "He was trying to protect me too," she said. "When he died." Her voice was level. Factual. The way children speak about pain they have already learned to carry because no one showed them another way to hold it. "He was trying to make sure I'd be all right." Viktor looked at the bracelet on her wrist. He thought about Samuel Reeves, a dock worker, a man with no power, no network, no resources, discovering something that could destroy one of the most dangerous men in the city. Knowing what that discovery meant for his own life. Taking the one thing he had, the one thing close enough to his daughter that it would never leave her, and using it. Not as a weapon. As a message. Find this. Use this. Make sure he faces what he did. "He did protect you," Viktor said. "He's still protecting you." Ava's fingers tightened slightly on his arm. Then she let go. She straightened. Adjusted the cane in her hand. Turned her face toward the city below them, the lights she couldn't see, the vast living sprawl of it, indifferent and enormous. "What happens now?" she said. Viktor looked at Marco, who had materialized at his shoulder. Marco's face was doing the thing it did when he had information that changed the shape of the evening. Not concern, Viktor's men didn't perform concern. Calculation. The look of a man running updated numbers through a situation that had just been revised. "Cipher came back," Marco said quietly. Tell me, Viktor said. Marco glanced at Ava. Tell me, Viktor said again. Marco exhaled once. The SD card contains the operational documents for Dorian's planned hit on 3 city officials. But that's not all. He paused. Cypher found something else in the routing data. Dorian has been positioning against your network for 18 months, Viktor. The Galatonite, the power cut, the chaos, it was supposed to be the beginning of a coordinated move against 2 of your primary distribution operations. Your absence from command while you were occupied with the event was built into Dorian's timeline. Viktor looked out over the city. He used my own event, Viktor said. Yes. He brought men to kill a child inside my building. As cover. For a larger operation against me. Yes. Viktor was quiet for a long moment. Ava was standing nearby, her head slightly turned. She was listening. She understood more of this than Viktor might have expected. She had spent the last 6 months surviving on the street with nothing but her ears and her instincts, and she was 9 years old, not 3. She was putting things together in the silence. Viktor, she said. He looked at her. The thing in my bracelet, she said. It can stop him. Can't it? Viktor looked at the worn wrist bracelet. Yes, he said. She unclipped it herself. She held it out toward him. Her arm extended. Her chin up. Her expression, in the city lights and the cold wind of the 22nd floor, absolutely certain. Viktor looked at the bracelet in her hand. He had not asked. He would not have asked. The bracelet was her father. The bracelet was the last physical connection between a dead man and his surviving daughter, and Viktor Crane did not take things from children. But she was offering it. Use it, she said. My dad hid it there so someone could use it. Use it. Viktor reached out. He took the bracelet from her hand carefully. He held it for a moment, this small, worn, weightless thing that had been carrying the weight of 6 months of danger and the grief of a little girl and the last act of a father who died trying to do something right. He closed his fist around it. I will, he said. Ava nodded once. Her hand went to her bare wrist. She held it there for a moment, the absence of the thing she had worn every day, and said nothing. Viktor turned to Marco. Get her somewhere warm and safe. I have work to do. The private medical facility was one of 4 that Viktor Crane maintained across the city, legitimate businesses on the surface, fully equipped, staffed by professionals whose discretion was part of their employment agreement. Viktor sat on a treatment table at midnight while a physician with steady hands and no questions cleaned and dressed the wound in his shoulder. 12 stitches. A shot that would hurt more in the morning than it did now. He didn't feel it. He was watching the door to the next room, where Ava had fallen asleep 20 minutes ago with Rosa sitting in the chair beside her bed. Viktor's jacket draped over Rosa's shoulders because the room was cold and nobody had thought to get her a blanket until it was too late to matter. Cypher had come back with everything. Viktor had read it once, standing up, in under 4 minutes. He read the way he did everything, completely, rapidly, retaining all of it. Samuel Reeves had been a data courier for Dorian Voss for 3 years. Low level. The kind of person a criminal organization uses when they need a human being to move information from one point to another precisely because human beings, unlike digital systems, leave no traceable signal. Samuel had moved encrypted drives between Dorian's dock operations and his financial people in the Eastern District for 3 years and asked no questions because asking questions was not what you did when you were Samuel Reeves and you had a blind daughter to feed. Then 8 months ago Samuel had picked up the wrong package. Or rather, the right one. The drive had not been encrypted the way the others were. A technical error on the part of someone in Dorian's operation who had assumed that a dock worker wouldn't know what he was looking at. Samuel had known exactly what he was looking at. The operational documents for Dorian's planned simultaneous assassination of Commissioner Harlow, Deputy Mayor Chen, and Federal Prosecutor Reyes. 3 people whose removal would create a political vacuum that Dorian had spent 2 years positioning himself to fill. Names, dates, methods, financial routing, the identities of the people contracted to carry out each hit. Samuel had copied everything onto a micro SD card. He had known, from the moment he copied it, that he was already dead. A man at Samuel Reeves's level did not have lawyers or safe houses or the kind of network that could protect him from Dorian Voss. He had a daughter who was blind and alone and whose future was a question that kept him awake at night under ordinary circumstances. He had sewn the SD card into Ava's bracelet. And then he had arranged for an accident of his own, not his own death, but the discovery of his cooperation with Dorian, which he timed to occur after a message had been sent to a federal contact he had been building quietly for 6 months. A message that said, "The evidence exists. My daughter has it. Find her first." The federal contact had been reassigned 3 months later and the message had fallen through a bureaucratic gap. Nobody had found Ava first. Nobody except Viktor. He stood in the corridor outside the medical suite and looked at the bracelet in his palm. "Cipher," he said into the phone. "How long to fully decode and document the card's contents for formal submission to the federal authorities?" "The content is already decoded. It was never truly encrypted, just compressed. We've had it for 40 minutes. A pause. "Viktor, do you understand what this does if we submit it?" "It destroys Dorian Voss's operation completely and sends him to prison for the rest of his life," Viktor said. "It also exposes relationships," Cipher said carefully. "Connections between Dorian and people who are currently understood to be neutral parties. People who have been quietly operating under the cover of Dorian's legitimate business fronts." "Send me the full list," Viktor said. He read it on his phone in the corridor at 42 minutes past midnight. For names on the list made him go very still. For people he had considered, not allies, not friends, but stable elements in the city's invisible ecosystem. For people whose apparent neutrality had structured several of his own long-term arrangements. They had not been neutral. They had been Dorian's. Viktor put the phone in his pocket. He walked to the window at the end of the corridor. City below. Still alive at this hour, the late-night traffic, the lit windows, the ordinary metabolism of a place that never fully slept. Marco came and stood beside him. "It's bigger than the girl," Marco said. "It was always bigger than the girl," Viktor said. Samuel Reeves understood that. That's why he hid it the way he hid it. "What do you want to do?" Viktor looked at the city. 20 years. 20 years of building something in this place, not just an empire but a structure. A set of rules and relationships and understood limits that kept the city's invisible world from becoming something genuinely uncontrollable. Viktor Crane was dangerous. He had never pretended otherwise. But he was dangerous the way a controlled burn is dangerous, purposeful, bounded, leaving space for other things to survive. Dorian Voss was dangerous the way an unchecked fire was dangerous. He had been moving for 18 months to replace order with chaos that he could then profit from. He had used a child as a tool. He had done it inside Viktor's building. "Send the message through every channel," Viktor said. "Every family. Every syndicate. Every network in the city. The decoded contents of the SD card. Sourced, verified, timestamped." Marco was quiet for a moment. "Viktor. That is a declaration." "He declared it," Viktor said. "When he brought professionals into my building to kill a 9-year-old girl. I'm responding." Marco said nothing further. He took out his phone. The message that went out 40 minutes later was 11 sentences. Viktor had written it himself. He did not use elevated language. He did not make threats or promises. He stated facts: the attempted assassination at the gala, the target, the age of the target, the evidence on the SD card, the planned political killings, the 18 months of deception. He closed with 6 words. He is no longer under protection. And then he composed a second message. This one went to a single recipient, Dorian Voss. "I have the card. I am willing to negotiate. Come to the table. Bring your terms. He sent it and put the phone away. Marco looked at him. You think he'll come? He has no choice, Viktor said. The message to the networks is already moving. His people are already pulling back. If he doesn't come to the table, he has nothing left to negotiate with tomorrow morning. Marco nodded slowly. And when he comes? Then we finish this, Viktor said. He went back to check on Ava. She was asleep. Genuinely, deeply asleep in a real bed for the first time in 3 months. Viktor could see it in the complete release of her face, the way her hand was open and relaxed rather than curled. Rosa was asleep in the chair, Viktor's jacket still over her shoulders. Viktor stood in the doorway and looked at the small figure in the bed. He thought about the bracelet in his pocket. About the weight of it, not physical, but everything else. He thought about Samuel Reeves making the calculation that a father makes when he is out of options. Choosing his daughter over himself. Choosing to hide the truth in the safest place he knew. The safest place he knew had been Ava. Viktor put his hand in his pocket and felt the bracelet there. He closed his eyes for a moment. He opened them and went to meet Dorian Voss. The meeting was in a conference room in one of Viktor's legitimate properties, a building that had security in every corridor and records that would survive any scrutiny. Dorian arrived at 2:15 in the morning in 2 cars with 6 men who were sent to wait in the lobby because the message had said bring your terms, not bring your team, and even now Dorian understood the difference between the kind of message you could ignore and the kind you couldn't. He came in looking like what he always looked like, composed, expensive, the practiced ease of a man who had made himself look legitimate so many times that he sometimes forgot the performance wasn't reality. He sat at the table. And then he saw the other people at the table. 3 syndicate leaders. Men who had received the decoded SD card contents. Men who had found their own names on Dorian's long-term target list. Men who had built their own structures in this city on the understanding that there were rules, and that the rules had just been violated in a way that concerned them directly. Dorian looked at their faces. And then he looked at Viktor. You planned this beautifully, he said. The composure was still there. Viktor gave him credit for it. You planned yours for 18 months, Viktor said. I planned mine in 4 hours. A pause. The card, Dorian said. Viktor placed it on the table. The original. Small, dark, weightless. The thing that a dock worker had died for and a little girl had carried unknowing in the bracelet her father gave her. The federal authorities received this at midnight tonight, Viktor said. Everything on it. Sourced and verified. Commissioner Harlow, Deputy Mayor Chen, Prosecutor Reyes, they will know what you planned. And every law enforcement body that Cypher has identified as uncorrupted will have copies before you could reach any of them. Dorian's jaw tightened. Unless, Viktor said. He let the word sit. Unless you are on a plane out of this city within 6 hours. You leave your financial records accessible for 30 days. You make no contact with your current network. You do not return. Dorian looked at the 3 men across the table. Each of them looked back with the particular expression of people who had already made their decisions and were simply waiting for the conversation to end so the consequence could begin. He looked at Viktor. You're doing this for a child you met tonight, Dorian said. There was something in his voice that might have been incomprehension. I'm doing this because you violated the rules of this city, Viktor said. The child is the reason I'm offering you the door instead of the alternative. Silence. Dorian Voss looked at the SD card on the table. He looked at the faces around him. He said, quietly, fine. Viktor nodded once. Marco will take you to the airport, he said. The plane carrying Dorian Voss left the city at 4:17 in the morning. Viktor stood at the window of his office and watched the lights of the departing aircraft trace a slow arc across the pre-dawn sky until they disappeared into the clouds above the city. He did not feel satisfaction exactly. He felt the particular quality of stillness that follows the resolution of something that had required everything he had, every resource, every relationship, every year of experience, to end correctly. Not triumphantly. Correctly. Marco came in without knocking, which was the only way he ever came in. He sat in the chair across from Viktor's desk without being invited, which was the only way he ever sat. Dorian's financial records have been made accessible, he said. Cypher is already working through them. The 3 city officials will receive anonymous briefings by morning through a legal channel that cannot be traced. He paused. Dorian's remaining network is dismantling itself. 3 lieutenants made contact with lawyers in the last hour. The rest are quiet. Viktor nodded. The 2 distribution operations he was targeting, Marco continued. Our people have them locked down. No breach occurred. Viktor nodded again. Marco looked at him. It's done, Viktor. I know, Viktor said. A long silence. The families are talking, Marco said. Viktor turned from the window. They're saying you've changed, Marco said carefully. Some of them are calling it weakness. Exposing yourself for a child. The shoulder. He glanced at Viktor's bandaged arm. The whole evening. Viktor sat behind his desk. He looked at the surface of it, the clean, ordered space that he kept deliberately empty because a cluttered desk, in his experience, reflected a cluttered mind, and Viktor Crane could not afford a cluttered mind. What do you think? He said. Marco was quiet for a moment, the real kind of quiet, not the polite kind. The kind where he was actually thinking. I think, Marco said, that you identified a threat that every security team in a 300-person event missed. That you neutralized it without a single civilian casualty. That you dismantled a rival's 18-month operation in under 5 hours using better intelligence and faster decisions than Dorian Voss made in a year and a half. He paused. And I think you did all of it while keeping a blind 9-year-old girl alive and unharmed. Another pause. If that's weakness, I'd like to know what strength looks like. Viktor looked at him. Marco stood. The house is being prepared. Rosa has agreed to the permanent arrangement. The trust has been established, it's in Ava's name, structured to release for education first and then at her discretion from 21 onward. He moved toward the door. The tutor is confirmed for Monday. Thank you, Viktor said. Marco stopped. In 11 years Viktor had said those exact words to Marco 4 times. Marco understood their weight. Get some sleep, Marco said. Your shoulder needs it. He left. Viktor sat alone in his office. He reached into his jacket pocket. He took out Elena's photograph. He set it on the desk in front of him and looked at it in the blue monitor light, his daughter at 6 years old, in the garden of the house they had lived in before everything changed, face turned toward the sun, laughing at something that the photograph had preserved without explanation. The laugh was complete. The joy was complete. She had been 7 when she died. She had never made it to 8. Viktor looked at the photograph for a long time. I couldn't save you, he said. His voice was very quiet. The voice of a man speaking to someone who was not there and had not been there for 6 years and whose absence was not something time had healed so much as something Viktor had learned to carry with enough discipline that it didn't show. But I saved her. He held the photograph. Then he put it carefully back in his pocket, stood, turned off the monitor, and went to check on Ava. The medical suite was warm and dim. Rosa was still in the chair, deeply asleep now, breathing slowly, Viktor's jacket still across her shoulders. Ava was in the bed, small and entirely still, her face completely relaxed in sleep in a way Viktor had not seen it during any of the hours they had spent together in motion and danger. He sat in the second chair by the window. He had not intended to stay. He stayed. He was still there 2 hours later when the first light of dawn came through the window, pale and gray and completely indifferent to everything that had happened in the dark. Ava stirred. Her hand moved. Found the bare space on her wrist where the bracelet had been and rested there for a moment. Her eyes opened. Moved, the way blind eyes sometimes do, without fixing on anything. Viktor, she said. Here, he said. A pause. Your heartbeat is slower, she said. Is it? It's been fast all night. She turned her face toward him in the early light. It's slow now. Yes, he said. She was quiet for a moment. Then, did you fix it? Yes. All of it? All of it. She breathed out slowly. The breath of someone setting something down that had been heavier than they'd realized. My dad would have wanted it to be used, she said. He didn't hide it so it would stay hidden forever. He hid it so it would reach the right person. Viktor looked at her. It did, he said. Another quiet. Viktor, she said. What happens to me now? And here it was. The question that a child asks when they have survived the crisis and the crisis is over and the world has to be figured out again. Not dramatically. Not with tears. Just directly, the way Ava asked everything, because she had never had the luxury of asking things sideways. Viktor leaned forward. Elbows on his knees. The posture of someone giving a thing their full attention. There's a house, he said. Outside the city. It has a garden. I'm told it's particularly good in the morning. There are trees. You can hear them. He paused. Rosa is going to live there with you. Ava turned her face toward Rosa's sleeping form in the chair. She snores, Ava said. I'll mention it to her, Viktor said. Ava almost smiled. There's a tutor, Viktor continued. Someone who specifically teaches children with visual impairment. And there's money, in your name, structured to fund your education and your future. Whatever you choose to do with your life, you will have the resources to do it. Ava was very still. You're doing all of that, she said slowly. For me. Yes. Because of what my dad hid in the bracelet? Viktor considered this. He could have said yes. It would have been partially true. It would also have been the lesser truth. No, he said. Because you guided me through a dark building when I couldn't see and you were completely unafraid. Because you told me your heartbeat was fast and then showed me what it looked like to not be afraid of the dark. He paused. Because your father tried to protect you and he deserved to succeed. Ava's chin dropped slightly. Then she reached out. Both hands. She found his face, the way she had on the rooftop, after the bullet, and held it between her small palms. Reading him. The way she read everything she needed to truly understand. Thank you, she said. Viktor put his hands over hers. You're welcome, he said. 3 days later, on a Friday morning when the light came through the autumn trees and long gold columns, Ava Reeves walked up a stone path to a white house outside the city with her cane tapping and her free hand trailing along a wooden gate and Rosa beside her. She found the garden herself. She found the bench at its center and sat on it and turned her face toward the morning sun and breathed out completely. Rosa stood at the gate and let the tears come without trying to stop them. Far across the city, Viktor Crane stood on his balcony with coffee in his hand and the photograph of Elena in his pocket and the sky going from gray to pale gold above him. Marco came and stood beside him. The families have stopped talking about weakness, Marco said. Viktor said nothing. 3 of them have issued statements through their networks, Marco continued. Quiet statements. Internal. They're adopting a version of the same principle. Viktor looked at the waking city. The defenseless are protected, Marco said. That's what they're saying. In their territories, the defenseless are protected. They're attributing it to you. Viktor drank his coffee. Make sure the house is stocked for winter, he said. Ava doesn't like the cold. Marco made a note. The city went about its morning, the fruit sellers and the school buses and the ordinary 10,000 lives that made up the visible face of a place that had 2 faces. The visible world, going about its business. The invisible world, recalibrated. In the garden of a white house outside the city, a blind girl lifted her face to the sun. In an office 40 floors up, a man who had spent 20 years being feared quietly became something else. Not soft. Not diminished. Not less than what he had been. More. Because it turned out that the one thing Viktor Crane had been missing for 6 years, the one thing that had made his empire feel, in the small hours, like an enormous elaborate machine for generating loneliness, was not something he could build or buy or acquire through 20 years of careful, brutal, intelligent work. It had walked into his building in a yellow dress, with a white cane, and no idea that she was about to change everything. They had said Viktor Crane was the most feared man in the city. They had been right. But fear builds walls. Fear builds distance. Fear builds the kind of empire that holds its shape as long as the fear holds, and no longer. What Ava had done, in one night, without trying, was show a man who had forgotten that he was more than his empire that the thing he had buried 6 years ago was not dead. It was waiting. For the right small face. The right tilted chin. The right white cane tapping on marble in a building where it had no business being, and the absolute, unafraid confidence of a child who had never been able to see the danger and had therefore never learned to stop walking toward it. He had ignored the models. Not because they weren't beautiful. Not because he was making a statement. Not because he had calculated what it would mean or what it would cost or what the room would think. He had ignored them because a small girl in a faded yellow dress was 12 steps from a corridor that would have killed her, and Viktor Crane still had one rule above all others. Never harm the innocent. He had simply, for the first time in a very long time, extended it. Protect them instead. If this story moved you, if Viktor and Ava made you feel something real tonight, hit that like button and let us know in the comments. Drop a comment below telling us what moment got you the most. Was it Ava guiding Viktor through the dark? Was it Viktor stepping in front of the bullet? Was it the bracelet? Tell us. And if you're not subscribed yet, this is the story that should change that. Subscribe now. Every story we tell is built to do exactly what this one did, take you somewhere you didn't expect and leave you somewhere better. We'll see you in the next one.